Hi, my name is Elizabeth Bekolay, and I'm here to show you one of the gardens that I've been working on for a number of years, just to encourage naturalized landscapes in the city and why. Come along with us as we tour the wâhkôhtowin garden. All right, so this garden was first installed in 2011. When it was first planted, the students from the school all helped. The community coordinator was the one that got the funding, and they just wanted an area that was an outdoor classroom that was diverse. And so we wanted to work around what was here already, and with this large pine, we thought, okay, perfect. We can have an area that represents the boreal forest. Underneath the pine, where it was really shady and where the needles drop naturally, we wanted to leave the needles as they drop or rake them into those piles. Originally, it became completely filled with sarsaparilla and fireweed and lungwort and many boreal plants. Then also mixing in food plants, because there's a lot of talk of food security in this community. And so some of the berry shrubs are native, but some of them are domestic berry shrubs. But the rest of the plants that are in here are native to Saskatchewan, other than a few weeds that got in here and there. Let's just walk through this way first. So I mean, at this time of year, it looks very different, but you'll see from the pictures in other times what it looked like in the summertime. This is blue flax. So what I like to do at this time of year is do a lot of seed collection, because when we're talking about native plants, there's not actually that many plant producers in the province, and I usually have to go to Alberta and Manitoba to get everything that I need for my projects. And so you see there's the wild blue flax seed. So then I would just take those. If there's a bare area that needs more seed, I just put that in that area, or keep it to grow more plants in the spring. This one is one of our most common native grasses. This is June grass, and it's named that because it mostly flowers in June. And in this area, I was just telling one of the participants, it's my favorite area because it has many plants that grow together that you don't often see growing together. This area was left without any real care for 5 years, and these plants just kind of chose to be together. So there's wild mint, which usually grows by the water, with wild strawberry and buffalo bean and hyssop and yarrow and flax, and it's just really diverse. And this is northern bedstraw. Lots of these plants may not look like very much at this time of year, but they're actually super important for habitat. So a lot of the native bees that we have and lots of other insects will lay their eggs in stems of plants like this, and that's how they'll overwinter. So it's really good to leave the stems of your plants around. Wâhkôhtowin School has a land-based program, and the land-based teachers spend a lot of time out at one of my workplaces at Brightwater, and they were part of choosing to have these planted back to the native grasses. So originally in 2011, they were planted to native grasses and flowers, but that was before native plant gardens were really understood, I think, in the city. And eventually, without care, we kind of lost them to quackgrass. And so this year we dug out these two beds were all quackgrass. So we dug out all the quackgrass by hand. In the middle, that's not quackgrass, that's sweetgrass. And so this was going to be all native grasses, and then we looked up and we're just like, oh, well, if that's all native grasses right there, then we're going to have to be raking the grass every year and the pine cones. And so we want to just be able to keep the pathways simple and rake up the pine cones that drop and make use of that mulch, right? Instead of trying to haul away that mulch, just make it work with and plant the plants that will work with that mulch that's creating itself from the tree. And then speaking of bees, it's really good to have areas in a garden where there's a lot of diverse landscape like this. So you see how there's some edges, even though this isn't very much, but this is just a little bit of an incline, and it's a little bit bare. So you could get some minor bees in here. In this garden in the spring, I found miner bees, sweat bees, lots of bumblebees, bees that I haven't identified yet. And so in Saskatchewan, just in case you don't know, we have over 350 different species of indigenous bees, so not including honeybees. So when we're talking about building habitat for these bees, it's most important to know what they need. And the recipe I always say is you need to have some areas of soil where they could burrow. You need stalks that remain standing all year. And you need areas that never get tilled or sprayed. And then you will have, and the nectar that's needed all summer long. Because a lot of the bees have a very short life or adulthood. So they'll be alive as an adult for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and the rest of the time they spend in their egg, larval, and pupal stages in the soil or in a plant stem. So, I mean, usually I see this out where I'm working, where the goldenrod gall flies, and sometimes I can't tell the difference in between the gallfly galls and the wasp galls, but I think these are the goldenrod gallfly galls. And this to me is an indicator that we have healthy biodiversity. Chickadees will come and land on here in the winter time, and they'll peck their way in. And the gallfly larvae are like about this big, and they're fat, like they're juicy. So that's important food for a little bird in the winter time, if they can get in there, if they have the patience to do so. So this is showy milkweed, which is native to a more southeastern part of the province. Up here, we have dwarf milkweed that grows wild and naturally. And so if I were to do this again, I'd plant more dwarf milkweed. But this one, we have had monarchs here. And so it's just really nice to know that it's supporting so many creatures, and they're really beautiful and they're edible. And some of the people that I've worked with here have been talking about how to cook them. And it's, even though they're poisonous and they give the caterpillar its poison, if they're cooked and the water's drained several times, I guess they make a pretty nice meal. Yeah. So, of course, bergamot is an excellent plant to gather some seed from. So if you just, I don't know if the camera can see that, but it looks like a bit of like a honeycomb almost shape. And so the seeds are down there because each of these, that's where one little tiny flower was. And so each of those has a seed. So if I go like this, then I've got all my bergamot seeds. So this one is giant hyssop. I can smell it without even touching it. It smells almost like black licorice. You just want to take the seed head, and it's a little bit more challenging because it's windy and they're all blowing away, but I think that's a seed. Okay, there, I've got 2 little seeds out of that bunch. They're kind of tiny, but when you look at how many seed heads are here, these are probably the 2 easiest to grow, bergamot and hyssop. If you wanted to bring some seed home, you would just keep it in the fridge or freezer for the winter time because they just have to be cold stratified. And these ones don't need to be scarified. So prairie seeds either need to be stratified or scarified usually. Scarified just means that it needs some kind of action like mimicking going through the gut of an animal. Yeah, but hot water works. A hot water soak overnight works for most plants. The only species I usually put into a garden design have to have either a food growing purpose or a biodiversity purpose, right? So I don't work with anything that won't fit into that criteria. It's intentional, yeah. Everything is intentional. And even what plants volunteer that I'll leave is usually intentional also. Like plantain does really well here. And it is a very important medicine. So I'll leave quite a bit of it. And same with pineapple weed, which is also, it's a native plant. And it's our native chamomile. And so I like to think that, whatever comes will be helpful to the space. Yeah.